Hey guys, it's Miss Price. Um, we're going to be looking at chapter 2 today in our new unit, um, early civilizations, early American civilizations. Today's chapter is Golden Age of the Maya. Okay, so there are vocabulary words I want us to look at first. The first one is incessant. It's an adjective, continuing without stopping. Two is penetrate, to go through or into something, which is a verb. Number three, temple, it's a noun. A building devoted to religious worship. Four, culture, which is a noun. The beliefs, traditions, and way of life shared by a group of people. Five, city state, which is a noun. A city and the surrounding area it that governs itself. Um, Okay, six has two definitions here. The first one is a verb, the second one is a noun. So the verb definition is to give something in exchange for something else. And the noun definition is a job that requires special training or skills. Arid is an adjective. Remember, an adjective is a word that describes a noun. It's dry and having little rain. Indigenous, it's an adjective, produced, living, or existing naturally in a particular area. Commerce is a noun, the buying and selling of goods and services. Kin is game, it's a noun. Two definitions here. One, animals that are hunted, and two, an activity done for pleasure or sport. And then 11 is symbolize, which is a verb, to stand for an idea or a characteristic. Okay. Now I want us to look at a reader, chapter 2. The big question here is, how did Maya society adapt and thrive in such a large and diverse region? Okay, so let's look at it. Golden Age of the Maya. Desiree Charnay was a French archaeologist who visited the jungles of Central America in the 1800s. He wrote the words below in his journal. The rain is incessant. The damp seems to penetrate the very marrow of our bones. A vegetable mold settles on our hats, which we are obliged to brush off daily. We live in mud. We are covered in mud. We breathe in mud. The ground is so slippery that we are as often on our backs as on our feet. Imagine slipping and sliding through mud all day long. Imagine constantly swatting at mosquitoes. Imagine pit vipers and tarantulas resting in trees overhead. Imagine constant heat and humidity, mud, poisonous creatures, and muggy weather were all part of Charnay's experiences in the rainforest. Charnay visited Central America after reading a travel book written by John Lloyd Stevens and illustrated by Frederick Catherwood. He was fascinated by the book's illustrations of ancient Mayan ruins. Catherwood drew pictures of vine-choked temples poking through clouds. His drawings of carved masks looked like real people. Stevens and Catherwood portrayed abandoned cities swallowed up by dense forest. Their book captured the imaginations of people from all around the world. Who were these Maya? People wondered. A city flourishes. The Maya were one of many groups of people who settled in Mesoamerica. They formed agricultural villages at least as early as 1800 BCE. Remember, that's before Common Era. Over time, they established a civilization. As many as 5 million people inhabited an area that stretched from the highlands of Guatemala to the plains of Yucatan. Between 250 and 900 CE, writing, religion, and art flourished. In certain respects, this era was the golden age for the Maya culture. The Maya were not ruled by a single ruler. The Maya lived in city-states scattered across considerable distances. Some of these city-states were larger than others. Each had a powerful lord who governed his own city and surrounding areas. The city-states both traded and fought with one another. Maya society was divided into classes, with lords in the highest class. Well-educated priests were also among the noble or highest classes. Both kings and priests lived in palaces closer to city centers. Powerful nobles usually lived in the largest houses. Craftsmen lived in smaller homes that were often far away from the city center. Farmers lived next to their fields that were even farther away. So you got to remember that paragraph, guys. That's a big paragraph that we're going to be looking at here in a little bit, okay? Pyramids, temples, gods, and sacrifice. Maya city-states were centers of both government and religion. Each center had some unique architectural designs. However, all centers had stone pyramids and temples. Some of the pyramids served as burial monuments to honor dead kings. Temples occupied the top level of the pyramids, purposely close to the heavens and the gods. These temples were reserved for rulers and priests. Pyramid temple complexes often surrounded a central plaza where public ceremonies and festivals took place. Religion was important to most aspects of Maya life. The Mayas believed in gods and goddesses, helped them explain the mystery of life itself. They believed that gods controlled everything. The gods were responsible for the rising and setting of the sun and the phases of the moon. They were certainly responsible for floods and droughts, as well as sickness and health. The Maya gave thanks for a bountiful harvest, a cured disease, or a victory in battle. They offered sacrifices or precious gifts to the gods. Sacrificial blood, both of animals and humans, was a common offering. Kings, sometimes called holy lords, were in charge of hosting sacrificial rituals and ceremonies. Toward the end of the Maya's golden age, the city-state Chichen Itza served as an important Maya center. Chichen Itza is located in an arid region of the northern Yucatan Peninsula. The Maya believed that the Chichen Itza's well of sacrifice was the home of gods who controlled the rain. The Maya offered sacrifices to the rain gods. They did so because they believed that their fields would be watered. This well continued to serve as a sacrificial site for centuries as Chichen Itza's decline as a major Maya center. Trading from highlands to lowlands. Trade routes followed rivers, seas, and roads across the Maya region, connecting these indigenous people to one another. Cities were hubs of commerce where people shared ideas and traded goods. The Maya used a barter system for exchanging daily necessities. People in the lowlands traded food, cotton, and jaguar skins for coastal salt and dried fish. You're going to need to know that too, guys. Okay, that's a big one right there. People across Mesoamerica used obsidian, a volcanic glass from the highlands, for both jewelry and tools. Wealthy Maya valued precious gemstones and the brightly colored feathers of the rainforest, quetzal birds. Feeding city-states, wetlands, mountains, and rainforests. Maya farmers worked hard to supply food to the city-states. Rainfall and soil quality varied through Mesoamerica. The Maya found clever ways to meet the challenges of their diverse landscapes. Some lowland areas received heavy rains from May through December, followed by drought from January through April. Because of this inconsistent rainfall, the Maya developed ways of redirecting and reusing rainwater. They created canals in the lowlands. They built raised earth platforms above the canals and created wetlands. Aquatic plants helped keep the water clean and provided shade for the fish in the canals. The fish, in turn, provided both food and fertilizer for the fields. In highland areas, the Maya cut terraces into slopes of mountains. They practiced multi-cropping on this flat land, planting and harvesting the land multiple times throughout the year. Their crops included beans, tomatoes, squash, chili peppers, and pumpkins. Maize or corn was the main food throughout Mesoamerica. In forested areas, the Maya used a technique known as slash and burn. They slashed or cut down trees and then burned the area. Then they planted new crops. Ashes left from the fire added nutrients to the soil. After several years, the crops used up the nutrients in the soil. The Maya then repeated the process in another area. The Maya also gathered tree crops. Fruit trees thrived in the rainforest. The Maya enjoyed the bountiful fruit of the breadnut tree. Similar to apricots in appearance, breadnut fruit has highly nutritious seeds. The Maya ate these seeds on or ground them into flour. The Maya also used many rainforest plants for medicine. Samaya hunted game in the forest, including deer, rabbits, and other small animals or mammals. Excuse me. They raised turkeys and dogs for food. They raised stingless bees for honey, when they which they used to sweeten foods and drink. In coastal communities, the Maya ate fish and turtles as well. It is important to remember that the Maya were not the first civilization to live in Mesoamerica. The way they lived was often very similar to the way others in the area lived. The Maya did not invent the pyramid, nor were they first to practice writing. Instead, the Maya often improved upon practices originally borrowed from other cultures. And this is neat right here, guys. An important ball game. The Maya played a ball game called Pakatak that had religious significance. Nearly every Maya city, had at least one ball court, enclosed by parallel walls. The rectangular courts varied in size. Some were nearly as large as a modern day football field. The game of Pakatak was played with a solid rubber ball that weighed as much as 8 pounds. Players kept the ball in the air with their knees, hips, shoulders, and forearms. Thick, heavy padding protected them in this fast-paced game. Rules varied among the city-states as Chichen Itza's court, the object was to pass the ball through stone hoops. In some city-states, players were sacrificed to the gods at the end of the game. It's possible that the game symbolized the passage of the sun across the sky. This was believed to be an important daily task performed by the gods. Let's see how much farther we have, guys. Oh, we're not too much farther. Painted mural at Bonampak, Life in the Royal Court. This mural was painted on a temple wall at Bonampak in southern Mexico. It shows that members of the king's royal court lived lives of luxury. Rulers grew wealthy from trade among city-states. The mural depicts how members of the royal court lived and dressed. Loose-fitting clothing was typical of all social classes. Noble women wore beads, pendants, and earrings made of precious jade. Noble men covered their heads with feathered headdresses made of quetzal plumes. Only the rich and powerful wore fancy clothes and jewels. All right, so now what I want us to do is look at um, a workbook page. I only have a minute and a half here um, for this, but we will go over this um, probably tomorrow at the start of my video. Okay, so what I want you to work on, and I'll send it to you in Google Classroom. Again, it will be in Cami in Google Classroom, so it's an easy thing for Miss Price to see. Okay, I want you to look at pages 17 and 18. 17 and 18, but do not worry about the challenge. The challenge is not what I need for you to, you don't worry about that, okay? So you're going to do numbers 1, 2, and 3, and it says in the following chart, the left side has Charnay's words wrote in his journal about the rainforest. On the right side, his words have been paraphrased or restated in different words. So you're going to fill in the blank spaces in the chart. And the first one is done for us. Kind of, the rain is incessant, means it rains all the time. So you're just going to fill that in, okay? And then for number 2, here's number 2 right here, this chart. You're going to start with fields. Obviously, the farmers work in the fields. And you've got to decide, okay, who's at the top? It kind of goes from top all the way to the bottom. And you're going to tell where they lived. All right. And then you just, in your own words, explain why you think this would be a good trade. Okay, with the barter system. All right, and then don't worry about the challenge. Okay, so pages 17 and 18. It's not for a grade, but I want you to look at it.